Hi, welcome back. Let me see if I can shift this. I'm just waiting for our guest to join us. He should be here in a minute, I hope. So the guest today is Antoon van Coillie, who I met when they were working on the Autoship project, which is an EU project that's almost finished up on autonomous vessels. He's got some really great insights, but we'll just wait and see if he can get in on the link. It's always fun to use new platforms. I'm starting to get used to this one, but it is a newer platform for me, and I don't think that he has used it before. He has shown up. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Welcome. The link worked okay. You got here.
Magic, technology is magic.
Yes. So I wanted to kind of invite you into my little passion side project input thing on how we might reshape the ocean industries going forward, and how all of us, as we learn more about all of the different sectors in the industry, might become more clear, complete picture of what can be done to make sure that we're going into a sustainable industry that we'd all like to work in the future. So they don't maybe know that much about you, so you can kind of share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in maritime, a little bit about your ships and things.
Okay, my name's Antoon van Coillie. I'm a Belgian based in what the burgomaster of the city calls the center of the world, Antwerp. We're active with Zulu Associates in developing zero-emission inland waterway vessels and short sea vessels. And the way we achieve this, or are willing to achieve this, is not just by using alternative propulsion systems, but by making the vessels autonomous. And by that, we mean having nobody on the vessel during transit. So it does mean that it still has people in the loop, whether in the remote control center, or whether it's when the vessel come into port or at a terminal, they need to be loaded, unloaded. Physical checks need to be done, and lots of things need to happen. And so people are still involved. It's not having nobody, on the contrary, but the jobs are going to be more easy. Sitting in the North Sea at the force 10 gale in a 150 meter long cargo ship is not great fun, and not very safe, and not very sociable. So using and then suddenly what happens is that if you do this, then you can see that you can design totally different vessels or than what is happening today, and that's what we're doing.
You mentioned alternative propulsion. Can you kind of explore that a little bit more? What kind of propulsion are you using?
Okay. Now, obviously, inland water is different from seagoing vessels. So basically, the vessels are fully electric below deck. And the reason why it's electric, because it's simple, certification is simple, technology exists. So all systems are electric below deck. And we put on the deck 20-foot containers with energy. And there we are agnostic. Basically, out of those containers, we need to get electricity out, whether inside you use batteries, hydrogen fuel cells, or even need be ICEs, internal combustion engines burning methanol or whatever. We don't care. As long as the container is self-maintained, not self-maintained, but self-sufficient, has, apart from the energy coming out and the data exchanges, has no linkages with the vessel as such. So the systems of the vessel are not used to maintain those containers. The advantage of doing that is that you can switch easily. So if the energy is no longer there, I mean, if you use batteries, You don't need to have the vessels to be in port and being quote unquote bunkered with electricity. You just switch the batteries or the containers. But also, if the technology changes and we see incredibly fast developments in energy technologies, then the vessel is not outmoded. We just change the type of container that goes onto the vessel.
Mhm.
So that means we make the vessels technology proof on energy sources. And this is important. For example, if we want to compete with trucks, where every 5 years the fleet is renewed, it doesn't happen with ships. But if you can renew the propulsion systems every 5 years, then you are on the same par in evolution as you would do with trucks, which means you become competitive with trucks. We find that for inland waterways, with the development of technology in batteries, the batteries will be a very interesting part of where you'd be to be used on inland waterways. Hydrogen is probably a very high one as well, especially for the longer distances. And then if we look at seagoing vessels, we think that hydrogen will be the one. Well, in certain trips we can also use the batteries. Seagoing vessels will also look at auxiliary power, and there we look at sails, but not canvas sails, or rather wings or rotors. And the other one is foils. There are some foil systems which give additional power, auxiliary power. And every 5%, 10% reduction in energy needs means you can go further on non-fossil fuel propulsion. So that's
Of course. Do you think that there's going to be challenges interfacing with the other parts of the industry that you're facing? So when you talk about the energy exchange of containers to get more containers in from the ports, or how the ports are handling smaller vessels, because some ports don't tend to cater towards smaller vessels, and how that might work now, what difficulties you're having, or what difficulties do you think that they're going to arise?
Well, it's a very interesting point that you come very quickly with the idea of smaller vessels as opposed to big vessels. I have an idea, in shipping, like in some other things, bigger is best. It's the macho, or I call it the Porsche syndrome. Men having a big car being very important because they have a big car. In a way, it's the economies of scale have been pushing very much the developments on shipping. But apart from the very long distances, like you go to China and all that sort of stuff, all these other movements don't need those big vessels. What you find is that vessels on relatively short distances, like on the North Sea, spend more time in port than they actually are sailing. So why do you need vessels, if you're not using them as a way? I mean, this is a bit of a boutade, as the French would say. But and then the problem is that in big ports like the port of Antwerp or the port of Rotterdam, they say we can't mix the small vessels with the big vessels, so the big vessels always have priority, and it doesn't work. And you find small vessels being stuck in the port for 2 days, 48 hours before being loaded and unloaded. So there is definitely need to have set up separate hubs for smaller vessels. And if you make the vessels autonomous, therefore you have a good planning for your trips. That means you can schedule it far more efficiently, and the whole logistic chain becomes more efficient. And the switch from small vessels to the big vessels needs to be done over land with electric trucks or whatever you have as systems to move them around. People say this costs money. Yes, it costs money, but if we don't do it, it also costs money. I mean, having a vessel stuck for 2 days in a port not doing anything is a very costly affair.
But I think no matter what, there's going to have to be a major investment in infrastructure, because it's not just about the ships, it's also about the ports, it's also about how the digital logistics chain as well as the physical logistics chain links together. And in order for us to make this fuel transition and to make these efficiency gains that we need to make as an industry, we're going to have to do something completely off the scale on infrastructure. Because if we're moving from fossil fuels to other infrastructure, whether it's electric and batteries or hydrogen or ammonia or LNG, there's a huge infrastructure shift that also needs to happen.
I totally agree. Totally agree. But then, if I come back to the big vessels, I think a lot of the costs that they generate are not being paid by the ones that operate.
Hmm.
And once authorities start really charging them for what they really cost in congestion, in land grabbing, in dredging. I mean, I shouldn't be saying that because we Belgians are very famous for our dredging, make a lot of money on it, although they moved more to the windmill things now. But dredging is a very costly affair, and
Hmm.
in certain places it's not allowed. For example, in India on the Ganges, there is an issue if they do too much dredging, so they don't do it. So they have to have smaller vessels rather than big ones.
Hmm.
But coming back again, if the cost of the big vessels are really charged, then I think we would have a different setup and different type of vessels being operated. Yeah.
Do you think it might bring back the lash model of vessels when they had the lighter aboard ship barges? Because that was kind of a 70s and 80s thing, and it didn't last very long.
Well, I don't think so. One main problem is with lash, it had a lot of equipment on the vessel that could go, bust or didn't work. So our philosophies have as little moving parts as possible on a vessel. Lash could be interesting, but the cost of a small gantry crane for moving containers from a smaller vessel are, it's been so you basically what you need, in our opinion, is a number of big ports, yes, where you have the big vessels coming in, and then you switch them to smaller vessels or trucks or trains or whatever, but make it far more efficient. And don't forget, the digitalization will allow us to make those changes far more efficient than what they are today.
Hmm. What do you think from the human perspective, how that's going to change the operational models of the industry? Because, of course, if you're adding more autonomy and more digitalization, it's not necessarily making less work or less people, it's making more work somewhere else. It's completely different kind. And how can we make that intentionally?
Well, first of all, if you want to have a lot of work on the shipping industry and have a lot of jobs in it, then go back to the old-fashioned sailing vessels. The clippers has needed a lot of people to move, not a lot of cargo. Interestingly, it's a model that certain French people are trying to put into motion again, and it's quite exciting to see what they want to do. I personally, having sailed, having also done things like fishery protection. Sailing, being a seafarer, is not an easy job. It's a tough job. It's sometimes an even very dangerous job. Socially, it's a difficult job as well. So if we can make the shipping industry such that we don't need to put people in those positions, then I think we should do it. There's no excuse for having people to spend, and even today, the last couple of years with COVID, where people were marooned on vessels, these things shouldn't happen. So my first intake is that, yes, we should, use old means that we have to give people better jobs, and which means better jobs, maybe jobs that pay more, why not? Jobs that are safer. There's a gender issue on ships, although people don't say it, but if you're, I may be wrong because I'm not a woman, but being a woman on a very narrow space on an inland barge with three other guys, or with three guys, and being a woman, and if you just happen to have a very macho, whatever, not drunk guy, one of those, which still happens, not when they're sailing,
yeah, it does happen.
It's not a very comfortable place to be as a woman. I was brought up respect women, but some people have a different view. So,
I spent 13 years on ships, deep sea, but I'm familiar
okay,
with scenarios that happen.
but we need more women in jobs, so we need to do more on that. And I think again, if we can, for example, having women. We need to train people to do to sail with ships, and interestingly, it's going to be a mixture of digitalization and doing it in the physical way as well. But why not have more women as shipmasters in remote control centers and things like that? Where the social control is much bigger than just on the ship where you're stuck for weeks on end with the same people. So I think but yes, there will be more jobs. There will be a lot of higher educated jobs. But don't forget, we still need people, engineers that go on the vessel that repair small things that have broken down. So
I was just going to bring that up, jump crews, because there's always going to be things that break. You're
yes,
always going to have to send someone there. Sensors break, equipment
absolutely.
breaks.
And that's why, we designed a vessel with a lot of redundancy, but we
Mhm.
know that these things are happening. So we've developed the concept of a load master, which is somebody who is in a terminal or port who receives the vessel as it was, and then goes on board and does a physical check, a visual check, and is involved in the operations on the vessel when it's in port. And he calls or she calls for the repair people. Something needs to be done. Maybe the vessel is for 4 hours in the port being loaded, and certain parts need to be painted. All these sorts of things can be organized, and this is the function of the load master. And I think it's going to be a crucial function, and it will be an interesting one. Yeah.
What do you think about? I mean, you talked about loading master, but what about the like chartering and brokerage of these kind of vessels, and how all of the kind of interconnected parts of maritime will work together on this? So I made a little thing I showed yesterday that's not in any way complete, but is the back of my envelope map of the groupings of the industry. So you have kind of the governance regulators, you have the professional services, and then you have kind of the owners and operators of assets. And here you have things like chartering and brokerage and hull clubs and admiralty law firms and vetting firms like Reshaping and others, as well as like the industry bodies. How do you think this landscape is affected by this new operation model?
Well, if we make things more digital, then there will be more transparency, and that will, influence the way the industry is structured, specifically on the professional services. Some people create margin because they know things that other people don't know. But if you make things more digital, then suddenly a lot of these sort of inefficiencies are disappearing. But I think these services will be still there, but they will have a different content. What I also think is that if we go to somewhat smaller vessels, you will see end clients that will charter a whole vessel. We're thinking about the DHLs of this world, or the Nikes, or the Amazons, and all that, who are doing it with planes. So why wouldn't they do it with ships? But then you're talking about the smaller amounts of TEUs. But yeah, I mean, that's another move. What we also are seeing is that companies that today are involved in logistics and mainly using trucks are starting to look at waterways as an alternative. I mean, let's take New York as an example. New York, Manhattan's an island, Long Island's an island. 90% of what they move, if not more, is done by truck. So moving goods from New Jersey, as they say, to Manhattan is done by truck. I mean, it's totally silly. You've got this incredible waterway, the Hudson, the East River, the port. A lot of that could be done on the waterways. And what you will find is that I think we're seeing that already, people getting interested in moving stuff on the waterways. If you look at, and the people that are interested are not shipping companies, because it's not the size of the big MSCs and all that needs to be done. It's local players that are interested. If you look on the west coast of the US, moving stuff from Los Angeles to Vancouver or from Mexico to Vancouver, all is done by truck. I mean, it's amazing. You could do it by a lot of that by vessels.
I'm pretty familiar with the East River and the currents there. So it depends on the vessel you want to put through there. But
again, I mean, if you look at what is happening now in New York, the way of inland shipping is still a tug and barge. Means it's the tug is always over-dimensioned because it needs to be, in case it really has to pull something really big, and pulling something on a cable is not an easy thing to do. And if you put it sideways, then you need a lot of counter rudder, which means using a lot of energy just to go on straight. But if you have self-propelled vessels, it's a different ballgame. and suddenly you find yourself doing something totally different. But the concept of the tug and barge is 19th century. Why? Because engines were very expensive, so you only had one engine vessel, and then you'd have dumb barges. They're still called dumb barges. But with electricity, with electric motors, propulsion systems, the costs are so low that you can put it on a barge and have the barge be self-propelled. It's a totally different way of operating things, but it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also, like the ATB concept of the integrated tug and barge to use in those scenarios as well, where you have actually a smaller tug that's
No, because
locked in.
even if, I mean, you're obviously American, so it's all very big in America. But even, I mean, I know the guys because we're talking to the barge operators there. I mean, the smallest ones they have are already very, very big. And again, they need a full crew because they are a barge with a tug. It's a bigger crew than on a vessel which is self-propelled, and they work in shifts. So you need double or triple the amount of people. If you do that, then you need sanitation, then you need a galley, then you need
Yeah, of
heads,
course.
and off you go. And suddenly you've extremely expensive bit of kit.
Well, and then also you need to deal with sewage. You need to deal with
Absolutely. So, if
yeah.
you do make it simpler, and let's face it, if you make it autonomous, then all these problems are gone. I mean, no SOLAS equipment anymore.
Well, and I think it also gets really interesting when it comes to the liability angle, because then you just have equipment damage and you don't have personal liability for the most part as far as the crew is concerned. You're not going to lose lives if you have an accident unless there's someone on the other vessel or they have a collision or elision with a manned object.
Well, I mean, one of the insurance companies we're talking to said, "Oh, there's nobody on the vessel. Oh, then our most expensive risk is gone." And worst comes to worst, it just sinks. So there's a material loss. Well, there could be a loss.
You could have a pollution and you could have a material loss, but it's not the same.
What is the pollution of electric engine and the battery?
It depends on what cargo they're carrying, really.
That's true, but that's insured separately.
Yeah.
For
the hull, it's okay.
For the hull and the PNI, basically, it's okay. But yeah, you're right. But but what most of the goods carried across, let's say in New York or whatever, they're not sort of. Obviously, you got ADNs, but most of the thing it is. So makes life simple.
Do you think that I'm missing something on this?
No. What is interesting, what you're doing is that you're sort of creating a synthesis of a lot of things. It's interesting. You're bringing a lot of things together, and I think what you're trying to do, or what you're actually doing, makes people think and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a very useful exercise. And no, I don't think you're at first hand. Well, one thing which we should also look at is the training of people within that new concept. What should the training be? What should the people have as skills, and how you learn the skills, and how do you attract people to do that? I think that's another interesting part of what is being discussed, which you could put somewhere in your mapping the ocean industry landscape. That is something you should be able to put somewhere as well.
Do you think it would fall into the kind of professional services, or more in the kind of overlap between the owner-operators and the...
I think it's a difficult one. I think you could even have it be a fourth
circle. Makes it more complex, but it's a complex ocean space. Because we'll get into the people really in another part. So this part is about the structure of the industry as a whole. And I have you there, but I didn't make a river inside the drawing. But you have a small vessel there. It's got I
can see
8 containers on it. It's the same scale as the LNG carrier, which is also a problem, but whatever. They're pre-made icons, so can't pick and choose that much. But I'm trying to see where things overlap and where they're connected. So you interface with ports, you interface with cargo owners, I would assume.
Yep.
What other places do you interface?
energy producers, energy services. In other words, you have people that generate or create energy, or a form of energy. For example, people that obviously generate electricity, but you have people that produce hydrogen or methanol. And then you have the people who put that energy in some sort of a usable format, like in a battery and all that sort of thing. So all of these people we are involved in as well. We're involved with all the people that are involved in communications, because if you have autonomous vessels, they need to be able to communicate. And that obviously means digital communication. Therefore, that means 4G, 5G, satellite, low orbit, other satellites. All these things are there as well. That also makes me think about the global positioning systems. Also something we connect with. But as I said, yes, ports, potential clients, users, logistics operators, even shipping lines we're talking to. So yeah, we're talking to lots. And then last but not least, regulators. Because they are very, very, very much important. Now, we are extremely lucky to be based in Belgium. Why? Because the Flemish Waterway Authority has received the order to adapt the regulations to allow autonomous and remote controlled sailing of inland waterways vessels. And of course, that combined with the Belgian royal decree that allows autonomous sailing in all Belgian waters means that we are having a playground, as it were, or an operational ground where we can actually start really using autonomous vessels.
Yeah, there's some really interesting things going on in that space. I'm also the chair of SAMS in Norway. And there's a lot of things happening also there, especially even in preparation for the Olympics, because some members are delivering vessels for Paris.
Yeah, our friends from Heike are going to deliver the thing. Of course, the French want to showcase it. And actually, we are very happy that Heike has got this, because we're active in the north of France, and now the French in the north of France as well. If it happens in Paris, you can also do it in the north of France.
Yeah, exactly.
Be able to join in on that. The Dutch have a huge problem because they have a large set of legacy asset owners who do not want autonomous sailing at this moment. But being in the European Union, if it happens in one country, then the other countries will have to follow. And the CCNR is also following each other. As for cross-channel, we are in discussion with the Belgian authorities, flag state, combined with the UK flag state and the MCA, to allow short sea vessels to cross the channel on an autonomous basis, i.e. nobody on the vessel during transit. And by the way, we already did a test on that in 2019, pre-COVID, with a 12-meter vessel, one of the Sea Kit vessels. Yes. Well, you couldn't call it vessels, let's call it a boat.
Yeah, tiny unmanned boat, yeah. With the yellow stripes.
It was the first commercial trip because they brought oysters and
beer. Oh. Yeah. I remember that one.
Yep. But the regulatory side is very important. And in Flanders, Belgium, they've realized that this will change and will give opportunities to new companies, new businesses, and will be important for zero emission and sustainability. Yeah.
Even if it's not on the side of autonomous, what do you think is standing in the way of small vessel operators switching to electric, besides the investment cost, of course, of changing? Do you think that there's barriers there? I can think of some, but...
Well, I think the industry will change, and the small vessel owners, i.e. the one who owns just one vessel or two vessels, will disappear. And the reason they will disappear is, first of all, most of them are like 60, which means in 10 years' time, they will probably not be operational anymore. Secondly, they don't operate on a 24/24 basis. Therefore, they cannot compete with companies that do it.
Mhm.
And that means that they also have less, when you're a big company like a steel producing company, and of course through a ships broker you can get inland ships sailing for you. But these guys, they don't sail at night, they don't sail at the weekend, or it costs money and all that sort of stuff. You don't have almost what I would call a peer-to-peer conversation, and that's
Mhm.
what we'll have to change. The level of service needed for logistics means that these people cannot deliver it. And
But do you think that there'll be like an Uber model for them going forward if they have?
I don't think so. I think no, because you don't need them. You don't need to be somebody to sit on a barge. You will have people in a remote control center controlling a fleet of vessels.
No, but I mean, even if they're a vessel owner of one vessel.
Well, why would you be an owner of one vessel? If the vessel breaks down, then you lose all your income. Why not invest in an asset company that owns 100 of those vessels? And if
Mhm.
10 of those break down, you still have income.
Yeah, it's
So
possible.
and why be involved in a vessel? When some insurance and all the problems that are there by running a vessel.
Mm.
Your risk, spread your risk over a number of vessels, and therefore you go on that. The one man, one ship owner is something of the past.
Mm.
And in a way, it is sad because I have a lot of respect for these people, but and some of the ones are incredible. They're good skippers. They maintain their vessels to a superb level, but it's it's the past.
Yeah. But I'm thinking of, the trucks now, there's still a lot of individual operators of trucks, and I guess it would depend on the overall investment cost of the size of the vessel, whether or not you're going to end up seeing an Uber model or even something still independent.
Will you see a lot of truck drivers if trucks start to be remotely controlled or autonomous? No.
No, but maybe you'll have truck owners.
Why would you have one truck if then something goes wrong with the truck? It's got a flat tire. It's your problem.
Well, they could own two, three, five. Who knows?
Yeah,
They
no,
seem like there's still a lot of individual owners of rental properties and those kind of things as well. So
yeah, it's possible, but I think they probably will go into sort of an amalgamation, and already in a way is already there. In France, for example, you have the SCAT, and in Holland the NPRC, which are
mhm.
cooperative companies that work with end user and end owner and ships. But and the other funny thing is that all the vessels today are different.
Mhm.
People live on it and that sort of thing. But if you standardize vessels, then suddenly a lot of things become far more efficient.
Mhm.
The scale in equipment, in digitalization, in digital twins, and all that is far more efficient than
Yeah,
everybody has
but
their
they
own.
still haven't standardized aircraft. They have to some extent, but still not standardized. Most airlines are owning more than one kind of aircraft.
Yeah, because they have different uses. But all the Boeing 737s are all the Boeing 737s. All the Airbuses are all the same.
Mhm.
You see people tending to get one type of plane from one
Yeah, of course.
manufacturer. So
There's a tendency, but it's still not there.
um,
Is there anything else you wanted to mention? Because I have a small appointment to pick up a small person very soon. So I have
well,
to
take
close up after the half hour.
you should
Um,
always take care of the small person because they always should have priority. So that's
yeah, I, it's a hard stop coming up soon that I have to have to go get her. But is there anything else you wanted to mention?
no. We are looking forward to the June demo of the Zulu barge with the Kongsberg equipment and the Autoship project.
Mhm.
And we are hopefully starting the building of our X barges after the summer, and we'll hopefully be building about 10 of those in the next 2 years to be fully operational. Sadly, not with Kongsberg equipment because it's inland waterways,
Yeah,
but that's part of life, you know.
yeah. Inland waterways are their own special market.
Well, it's you could have similar things.
But
But
I'm
anyway,
a fan of inland waterways. I think that they're really underutilized, and there's a lot of business to be had on them.
yeah,
Um,
you know. things
But
like
if you have any other input for the project or you think of something, you can always just send me an email or a message. And thank you very much for taking the time to come and share.
with pleasure.
And hopefully I'll talk to you soon, and really good luck with the demo. I'm not really involved on that one.
I hope you will come and see.
I hope to come and see also. I'll be in Belgium, but not in June, I don't think.
Well, you should. The weather should be okay, and the food will be absolutely great. So,
Yeah.
what else?
Well, my husband's from Belgium, so
Oh, well, there you are. And by the
we go
way,
quite often, but I don't think we'll be there in June.
the Flemish waterways will be able to use their what I would call party boat. They have a sort of a boat that goes around to see things with the infrastructure to do presentations, drink, and have something to eat. So it's going to be fun.
I hope so. I'll talk to you soon, and
All right,
have a really great rest of the afternoon.
and take care for the little one.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.